It's hard to believe, but after a stunning debut 4 years ago, Game Science's Black Myth Wukong is nearly upon us. Available in August for the PS5 and PC, with the Xbox Series X and S versions coming later, it's based on Journey to the West, the legendary Chinese novel by Wu Chengyan. However, it doesn't seem to follow the same story closely, as the protagonist is called the Destined One, and their exact identity is unknown. They still encounter numerous challenges, from terrifying monsters to dragons. With all the Souls-likes we've seen over the years, it's nice to see a hack-and-slash title that leans more into character-driven action RPG territory, even if there are some Souls-light elements. Not only does it look gorgeous, but it could be the best title based on the legend of Sun Wukong we've seen yet. The biggest reason I'm so excited for the title is because it's a boss rush game. The term may sound familiar. It's used for modes in various genres where the player must battle a game's bosses one after another, sometimes without healing or replenishing their items. Sometimes it's for glory, as you attempt to clear the fight as quickly as possible for a new record. On other occasions, it can be a means to practice against certain bosses before fighting them in the main story, which is especially valuable in roguelike titles such as Dead Cells. Either way, they cut out everything else from the base game and get straight to the biggest challenges. Boss rush games, on the other hand, are titles whose main gameplay element is fighting bosses. While Souls-likes have the same elements, they often flesh out the other action-adventure elements with more puzzles, extensive quest lines, exploration, and platforming. Based on previews thus far, Black Myth Wukong offers relatively more straightforward areas. Some paths lead to challenging optional bosses and a cinematic story with its fair share of cutscenes. However, the bulk of the gameplay focuses on the bosses. While these previews focused on early levels in the game, with Game Science noting the map to be, quote, much bigger, the developers still classified it as a, quote, linear game propelled by its storyline to Eurogamer. Nevertheless, there's been some concern over how barren the areas can feel despite the presence of smaller enemies and materials to gather. It's a point of contention that's steadily grown through the years as the gameplay was revealed. On the one hand, some claim it's not a boss rush title because, well, we haven't seen everything that it has to offer in terms of world design and quests, which is honestly a fair assessment. On the other hand, some are hesitant about picking up Wukong because, and I'm paraphrasing here, quote, a boss rush game for $60? No thanks. Both views hinge on expectations, one arguing to see more before prematurely labeling it, and the other goes by all the footage and previews seen thus far while seeking something more, whether it's more bang for their buck or something beyond fighting bosses. However, is being a boss rush game at its core all that bad? It's easy to see why the genre may come across as streamlined, especially when other action RPG titles like Elden Ring and more offer so much more in addition to strong boss design. That's far from the case, given all the stellar fights that Black Myth Wukong has displayed over the years. We've seen Guanxi, a wolf-like monk with a flaming double blade, which the Destined One must weave and dodge through to nail his counterattacks. There's another wolf-like boss, but massive in size and absolutely feral, attacking in a berserker-like fashion. And let's not forget the tiger boss, who, even with a hulking frame, exhibits graceful martial arts prowess, which you'll probably not think about due to fighting in a pool of shallow blood, likely previous victims. You have a giant serpent floating around, firing off lightning, and the best resource of action is to smack it in the face as hard as possible with your staff. I'm not sure what the best strategy is against the giant insect-like creature that slams its body into the ground to crush the Destined One, but fire might be a good place to start. These are just the tip of the spear, as Game Science has showcased dozens of other bosses in that period, each unique, gorgeous, and imaginative in their own right. The fact that there are so many and of consistently high quality proves that the developer did not skimp on the same. In a way, Black Myth Wukong reminds me of Fury from the Game Bakers. It didn't offer any other enemies, collectibles, or upgrades. The exploration consisted of little more than walking from one destination to the next as an enigmatic man with a rabbit head spoke to you. Otherwise, it was only boss fights from top to bottom, which could have more or less phases depending on the difficulty. Even after 8 years, these bosses remain full of character, describing their stories, giving further context to the protagonist's journey, and much more. They're also challenging, mixing hack-and-slash elements with split-second decision-making and dodging bullet hells. Very few boss rush titles have captured this same level of quality and challenge. Game Science is going for something else with its boss designs, but that sheer spectacle and some of the more intriguing elements of the story is hard to deny. Furthermore, it may offer even more with its replay value due to the sheer number of spells and transformations that the Destined One can learn. Never mind the armor set bonuses, weapons, and build crafting, and we haven't even seen the highest rarity loot. There's also extensive combo potential, given the different stances that the player can employ. Even if it seems streamlined compared to your average AAA action RPG made by studios with hundreds of developers, that doesn't mean its approach is any less enticing or enjoyable. It's also worth remembering that when Game Science started developing on the title back in 2018, it only had 7 employees. When it was announced in 2020, this had grown to about 30, and current reports put the studio around 100 or so developers. While that's not small by any means, it's impressive to see it delivering on such an epic premise with such fidelity, despite not possessing the same resources as some bigger developers. When Black Myth Wukong finally ships, I want it to have the same vibe as action movies like Ong Bak 2 or The Raid 2. That feeling of epic battles against unique foes who are seemingly on the same level as the protagonist before getting battered into oblivion, and hopefully with a happier ending than Ong Bak 2. It won't provide fight after fight with little time to rest because Journey to the West is going for a different vibe. However, that promise of embarking on this fantastical path and taking down all kinds of mythical foes is too hard to resist. Whether the boss rush label is viewed as a point of contention or not worth spending money on for whatever reason, the game's core identity feels unique. If it delivers a fun experience at the end of the day, I think it's worth embracing, even if it doesn't conform to traditional genres like Souls-like and whatnot. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Bolt, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.